Joining us on the line is a gentleman who has been with us several times before as issues emerged. He is a former Minister of National Security, a former Commissioner of Police, and the present political leader of the National Transformation Alliance. Good morning and welcome back to the People's Platform. To you, Captain Gary Griffith. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Hi, good morning to you and to your many listeners. Always my pleasure to be on.
Well, Captain Griffith, we understand that there was not a pleasurable sight at Ryson Road yesterday. And while I do want to get into the depth of some national security discussions, I understand that you had some views on how yesterday's gridlock traffic and how the flooding that led to the gridlock traffic ought to have been managed by agents of the state. What would you have done or what would you have recommended had you been in such a position?
Sure. So after the attempted coup in 1990, and you want to know why I'm referring to that, the Commission of Inquiry into the attempted coup, they did a comprehensive document and they demanded that what is mandatory is a national operations center because the country will always be falling short to deal with any natural or man-made disaster because of lack of coordination, communication, dialogue between different arms of the protective services and other arms of the state and that of the public. And that was the demand for the National Operations Center. That was done in 2013 when I was Minister of National Security. Unfortunately, on the departure of the People's Partnership, very foolishly, they decided to put it under the SSA to be used as an intelligence gathering body, which is not the case. And that is why one hand that doesn't know what the other is doing, which is what caused the problem in 1990. And that is what it is I did as Commissioner of Police. I realigned an operational command center and a commissioner's command center to be able to monitor any situation for a natural or man-made disaster to ensure we can have an immediate response, we can have communication with the public, proper dialogue, and be able to utilize the resources of the state in an effective manner to minimize whether it is congestion, to reduce crime, and to deal with situations so that the people will be aware. That obviously yesterday was a perfect example to show why it did not take place. I asked anyone, if you saw one police officer in the ground yesterday, I'm just asking anybody to call in and say if you saw one, there are 7,000, the whole country was in gridlock. Did you see one police officer out there trying to assist in directing traffic and trying to ease the congestion? And this is not the fault of the 7,000 police officers. We will recall just 2 years ago, every time there was traffic congestion, you will see police, and there was a reason for that. That operational command center, we will utilize the cameras, we will have personnel watching. So as soon as there's any traffic congestion, whether it is based on a traffic light not working, whether it is based on flooding, whether it is based on a major event somewhere, we will have monitor the situation, look to see what is causing the gridlock, send officers, deploy them there, and have them move in our area and a way to minimize the congestion. And that has stopped for the last 2 years because the operational command center and the commissioner's command center, the plug has been pulled. So there's no coordination, no communication, no dialogue, nothing being told to the public. We were actually informing the public as to where there's traffic, what is happening, where best to go, what needs to be done. The public also had access to give information to the police via the online reporting and the police app. All of these things have also been shut down and dismantled based on either ignorance or political pettiness. And it's unfortunate that the whole country, people spend sometimes a good 4 hours to move from Cascade to Maharaval. There was nothing that could be done, no coordination, no involvement with the state. And it is not the officers to be blamed. It is based on lack of leadership, and based on political pettiness by removing systems that worked previously.
When you say a lack of leadership, are you referring to whom? The Minister of National Security, the Commissioner of Police, the person in charge of traffic wardens? Who do you think ought to have risen to the occasion yesterday?
Well, definitely the Minister of National Security, with any of these things, whether it is a major concern of crime, whether it is traffic congestion, or anything, there's not a word heard by the Minister of National Security. The buck stops there. Even when I was minister, a major flood in the country, the Minister of National Security must be involved because that's where you have arms of the defense force to assist, the engineer battalion, the fire services that we deploy equipment, the police service to assist in traffic congestion. You will have major floods. You will have situations with major traffic congestion, and not a word from the Ministry of National Security. It is because of his ignorance in understanding his role and function. He feels it is just to reduce crime. Well, no, in fact, he said not even that was his responsibility. And then with the Commissioner of Police, you would recall that where it is for Carnival I will actually be on the road itself. People usually before 2018 will spend hours during Carnival Saturday and so forth because of the traffic congestion. You have to look at every single method to find ways to make life easier for citizens. That is the role and function of the state. And something simple as a traffic congestion. Where's the commissioner of police? What was done? And the media wouldn't even ask her what was the involvement of the police to deal with trying to ease the traffic congestion and the flow of traffic yesterday. She wouldn't answer because she's not available, but even the media doesn't understand the responsibility of the commissioner of police. So because of that lack of leadership, lack of understanding their role and function, and deliberately politicizing national security based on political pettiness by shutting down and dismantle systems that worked and that made people feel comfortable, ease their frustration. It has caused these individuals to feel that after what has happened yesterday, they will say to themselves they did nothing wrong because they don't even understand their own responsibility.
Now, forgive me if I don't understand the jurisdictions, but let's take Port of Spain, for example. You have the Port of Spain. Is that a jurisdiction by itself, or do you refer to that part of Port of Spain that was flooded as the Western Division?
No, the Western Division primarily
Diego
Piti
Martin.
Valley,
Okay, okay.
Caranage, Diego Martin, Cocorite. And then you have the Port of Spain Division. So what would have been done, what would have happened 2 years back is that we had something called Emergency Response Patrol, which has also been dismantled. And you had 10 vehicles specifically assigned that anytime there was a 999 call, immediately these vehicles will respond. So based on the data, it was confirmed that on average, any 999 call, you will get a response in less than 5 minutes. No, I think it's more than 50. It's more like 50 minutes. And the reason for that less than 5 minutes is because of that operational command center, that commissioner's command center, GPS tracking on each of these 10 vehicles assigned to each of the 9 divisions. So just think of Port of Spain and have 10 police vehicles just patrolling, staying in the area of responsibility. Anytime there's a 999 call, the vehicle in closest proximity to that distress call will then respond. That is what caused a major reduction in crime because the criminal elements realized the product of opportunity was no longer there. There will be an immediate response, so that caused the deterrent. And similar to Diego Martin, where you could have 3 vehicles in Piti Valley, 3 in Caranage, 3 in Diego Martin, 1 in Cocorite, patrolling constantly. Anytime you have a distress call, you could have an immediate response because you're watching the vehicles, seeing their area of responsibility and monitoring and their performance and assessing it. And that, so if now we've gone back with that all being shut down, you're not seeing police vehicles around. In fact, before 2021, people complained that they were seeing too many police vehicles because we were measuring their performance and making them accountable. This is the same thing that would have been done yesterday. Those 10 police vehicles would have been immediately deployed to certain areas to have them assist in the directing of traffic. None of that was done because the ERP has been virtually shut down, dismantled, the GPS not being monitored, they're not staying in the area of responsibility, and the operation center is not monitoring where there's traffic congestion, when there's a 999 call to have them deployed immediately. And therein lies the problem. Everything has automatically collapsed. And what is still amazing, you have 130,000 diehard PNM till dead supporters still saying, I still want to vote for Keith Rowley.
It's interesting that you brought the politics into it because as I saw the videos of the flooding yesterday, I couldn't help but see the NT office right there in the middle of all of the flooding. Let's talk about the issue of some. So I'm sure you opened the window and you saw the water rushing past you. But let's talk about the issue of the budget because we were bringing the politics into it now, and as much as we're speaking about flooding, a number of statements have been made, Mr. Griffith, about the state of affairs in Trinidad and Tobago. Sometimes I wonder where should I begin with you. Let's begin with the situation of the prison officers. You are not just a former commissioner of police, but you are a former minister of national security, and dealing with matters pertaining to the prison was up your purview. There's a situation that arose, or there was a situation which arose. The deputy commissioner of prisons was the subject of an attempted hit. That is a very senior position in the prisons, and it comes after several instances of prison officers being shot at, in many cases being killed. The Minister of National Security continues to assure all that the prisons is not in a state of crisis. What are your thoughts emerging from that particular attempted hit on the deputy commissioner?
Well, this situation virtually sums up that there's a virtual collapse of the Ministry of National Security, and it starts at the top. For the minister not to understand the importance of trying to secure your officers, and I'll tell you why I say that. When I was the Minister of National Security, I insisted that we provide armored vehicles for the heads of the protective services and the frontline officers who go into volatile areas, hotspot areas to patrol. So, for example, police officers going into a hotspot area at 2 o'clock in the morning, they need an armored vehicle because they can easily be taken out. The Prime Minister, in his ignorance in understanding national security, said when we opened the Caranage police station, I don't know why Gary Griffith wants SUVs for the police officers. They could go in sedans. But yet he, however, and all the other politicians have armored vehicles that should have been used for the law enforcement officials, and surrounded by over 20 special branch officers when he has to go to the 9th hole on the golf course in Mocha 3 days a week. And it shows the lack of understanding, appreciation, care, and concern for the lives of those persons who are there to protect this country. So instead of the Deputy Commissioner of Prisons, the Commissioner of Prisons, the Chief of Defence Staff, the Commissioner of Police, and also those units such as the IATF, and so forth, that would be in front line in volatile areas to patrol, if there's a serious situation, even hostage negotiation, a terrorist activity, the police do not have an armored vehicle. How could you extract someone in a hostage situation, or to go in a volatile area where gunshots are being fired, and the Prime Minister is saying, well, let them go in a sedan? Those were the exact words by the Prime Minister. It shows his ignorance and lack of understanding and appreciation to secure those persons. It's not that the lives of law enforcement mean more than the life of any citizen, but when you attack and target law enforcement officials, you cut deep into the heart and the belly of what our democracy is about, because that means you're affecting our democracy. That is worse than anything that can happen. And when you see the situation recently, a Deputy Commissioner of Police is under threat. Another prison officer was shot at. Another one, his car was firebombed. Another one he was shot at recently. And the acting commissioner of prisons says those two matters are isolated. It has nothing to do with the prisons. Of course it does. So you have 4 situations that have taken place in 2 weeks, and the commissioner of prisons trivializes the situation. Why? Because I think he is de facto a superintendent. This is about 4 levels down to what he's supposed to. That is similar to probably a superintendent or a senior sup being the acting commissioner of police. That is unacceptable. So it shows that bad management on behalf of the state, that the Service Commission has a superintendent who may not be qualified or have the capability to understand the role and function of a commissioner of police, and more so, they are not doing anything to protect the prison officers. And then you have a Minister of National Security and a Prime Minister trivializing the importance of securing these individuals by not providing armored vehicles for them, but you provide it for yourself whilst you have police security. Going back to prisons, what is required is proactive thinking. As the Commissioner of Police, I got heavily involved in trying to protect prison officers. Unfortunately, the police app and the online reporting, which were instrumental pieces of machinery and technology that were used to give citizens the access to give information to the law enforcement officials to assist us in what is known as predictive policing, trying to prevent the murder from taking place. We spend so much time speaking about detection rate, but predictive policing is what we did, that we prevented dozens of murders from taking place because we had a social media monitoring team monitoring what was happening on social media, where sometimes gangs, they boast about crimes about to take place or took place. The police app and the online reporting allowing persons to give information, the 482 Gary. So we on many occasions actually stopped criminals from heading towards locations where they were going to put hits on citizens and even prison officers and police officers. The online reporting, the app reporting, the 482 Gary, all of those things have been shut down and dismantled. And then the systems that I put in place, there was a wing that we had in the prison. It was known as Wing 13, where what we did was we planted police officers, then backed up by prison officers, backed up by soldiers. So if anything has to get to that wing, it must go through 3 layers to prevent the access of cell phones getting into the hands of individuals who are calling hits on persons on the outside. That is how you deal with these things. That's how you're proactive. All of these things have been shut down. So getting a cell phone in the prison is easier than going to Mobile or Digicel store to collect one. There was a time I remember one prisoner got 4 cell phones within 24 hours. Every time we see seized his phone, he got one back in a few hours. That is how serious it is in the prison. So what you do, you have to be proactive, think out of the box. So that wing has been shut down. The use of the police and the defense force in the prisons to prevent cell phones from getting in the hands of persons who may be deemed as an enemy of the state, that were calling hits on the outside. That has been shut down. The police app, the online reporting, the social media monitoring team, and all of these things were instrumental towards preventing the prison officers from being targeted. Let me not even go along the line of the 5,000 firearms that Keith Rowley continues to be upset about, that are issued to give to law-abiding citizens to protect themselves. Almost half of those were to law enforcement officials. And my intention was to give out to virtually all of the prison officers and police officers whose lives were at risk, because we have a stupid system that when you leave your station and you leave the prison, you have to turn in your firearm, and then your life is at risk on the outside, that you can't protect you and your family. And 130,000 PNM till a dead supporters still said, I don't care. Long live the PNM. So half of those FULs I issued would have been to give them to prison officers to have them protected. And this has also been stopped. So to people who say long live the PNM, you need Jesus.
Well, I'm not too sure as to what exactly persons may need, but I do know, Captain Griffith, that we need to take a short break right now to do our time check. I'd like to invite you to stay on the line for us as we do. The time in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is 7:35 a.m., and that time check is brought to you with the kind compliments of Docks Engineering.
Are you ready to own your own home? But worried about time, money, and construction? We handle it all. With Docks, you can sleep in your dream. Make a down payment of $100K or $150K and we'll build a 2 or 3 bedroom home on your unused land. A home is an investment into your future, so let's help you invest wise, invest well. Payment plans available. We're only a call away.
Welcome back to the People's Platform. Our guest this morning, Captain Gary Griffith. We have been discussing the issue of the deadlock flooding taking place, the deadlock traffic and the widespread flooding taking place in Port of Spain, and the management of that issue. And we've also started to look at the case of prison officers and other national security matters. Captain Griffith, let me ask you a question. As a former Minister of National Security, why are prison officers so often the targets of hitmen from behind the prisons? Some people say that they are prison officers who are in all kind of bubble with the prisoners, and then as a result of their not standing, not doing the bubble they're supposed to do, they are subjects of a hit. There are other people who are theorizing that, listen, maybe they are prison officers who are standing up to some criminals and not doing the bidding of the criminals inside. So are they being responsible? Are they being compromised? What exactly are they paying the price for?
Well, definitely that. I can confirm that the 1 or 2 prison officers who were killed in the last few years, it was because they were standing firm and refusing to adhere to the wishes and the demands of certain prisoners. And they lost their lives because of it. And that's why I got involved as the Commissioner of Police, because of the incompetence of the Ministers of National Security, Stuart Young and Fitzgerald Hines. They didn't know what to do. The catalyst for the reduction of crime is the implementation of government policies. So as the Commissioner of Police, I had to get involved, similar to me having to form a police marine unit to get involved in dealing with securing our borders, similar to me getting involved in acquiring scanners, mobile scanners, to assist the ports in monitoring illegal guns entering. The same way I was able to assist in drafting the border protection unit to give to an incompetent government because they didn't know how to secure our borders from illegal guns entering through legitimate ports of entry. I had to get involved as well to secure our prison officers because they were being targeted and the state did not know what to do. And obviously because of that operational command center, the online reporting we were getting, the social media monitoring, we were able to guide and assist many of these prison officers to let them know that you're being targeted, this is what is happening. And that's what I explained about, is known as predictive policing, anticipating the crime before it takes place to provide the deterrence to prevent it from happening. So prison officers would have been targeted. And then what we did is to form that wing to make sure that if a cup of tea has to enter for that prisoner, 2 soldiers must check it first, and then after it gets to the other table in the back for 2 police officers, and then it gets to the other table for 2 prison officers. So all 6 must be compromised. The laws of probability for 6 persons from 3 different arms of the protective services all being compromised at the same time would be virtually non-existent. But just having one prison officer having easy access to walk through any corridor in a cell in the prison to give out a cell phone, that is what has caused the problem. The easy access for any prison officer. The few prison officers that will monitor it and make sure they were the ones that were targeted. So I think it is unfortunate that people will try to question the prison officers who have been targeted and killed. However, it means that there are other prison officers, just like police officers and customs. There will always be rogue elements in these services, and those individuals have compromised safety and security for the other prison officers who are doing their hard work. And because of that, they give easy access for these persons to get what they want, whether it be cigarettes, alcohol, getting messages sent out, getting cell phones provided. And this is what has caused the problem. One of the things I was also looking at was to do a transfer of prisoners. When we get back in government, I intend to look at that. So, for example, if we have 10 high-risk prisoners, take them from here and send them to Grenada prison. Send the Grenadian prisoners to Barbados, send the Barbados prisoners to Trinidad. It takes away that degree of familiarity between the prisoners and certain prison officers, and then you do the virtual hearing or whatever. So there are things that can be done, but you've got to be proactive. You've got to find solutions. You've got to find policies, and not just sit back and watch the country burn, which is what is happening now based on the failure of the Minister of National Security and by and large the Commissioner of Police. They have not come up with one solution, one policy, one plan. All they have been doing is shutting down and dismantling every single thing that actually worked.
We have about 7 more minutes now time together, but Captain Griffith, I'd like to ask you a view about the fire services. As a Minister of National Security, you would have had a purview over the fire services, and we have been hearing all types of mixed stories about the state of resources there. The Fire Association continues to lament that there are some stations without tenders, that there have been several requests for different pieces of apparatus, and those pieces of apparatus have not yet been delivered. But the Minister of National Security is of the view that as best as is possible is in fact being done. What are some of your thoughts on these reports emerging surrounding the fire service?
Well, this has never happened. How come these things always happen when the PNM is in power? How come this didn't happen under the People's Partnership or the UNC from 95 to 2001? It is always because of bad management. If it is that lots of funds are being wasted based on incompetence and bad management, it means the critical items that are required by the arms of the protective services would not be provided because they are cash strapped. And I'll give you a perfect example. Even as me as Commissioner of Police, Colin Imbert in his wisdom cut my budget by $300 million in a time where the protective services would have been at the highest level during COVID, during the pandemic. But still, I was able to balance the budget and still provide the access for vehicles being repaired through I support our services, working with the private sector, also trying to find different avenues to reduce our expenditure, such as over $100 million per annum in overtime corruption, because just about 200 odd officers claim they were working 24 hours a day, 30 days a month, getting $70,000 a month, and being approved by senior officers, trying to remove the corruption for firearms, where officers would be holding back firearms at stations, or police officers escorting trucks and containers without being approved by the Commissioner of Police and getting paid on the side. So when you reduce and minimize your expenditure through wastage, through corruption, you can then utilize funds that are required. That is not what is happening now. So the fire services, the people are trying to blame those at the top in the fire services. It is not their fault. They would have made the request. The government has failed to provide the basic requirements for the fire services, and it's the same thing that they have done for almost every arm in the Ministry of National Security. They are unable to provide because they cannot balance a budget. And even when they give budget allocations, let me tell the country, it is false and misleading, because you see a budget allocation of say $400 million for goods and services for the police, but for the first 6 months you don't give releases. So if you don't give releases, it means that you can't pay bills to repair vehicles, to provide fuel, to get uniform, to get equipment, to get training. And then at the end of the fiscal year, you say you only give out $240 million. The next fiscal year, Mr. Imbert will say, well, you only spent $240, so that's all you'll get this year. But that's all that you give in releases, and it was not equated with what it is you had established to give in the initial budget. So the budget presentation of what they boast about, it is not in any way linked to what actually is received by those persons. And again, so to the 20,000 members of the protective services, please understand that the government does not understand the importance of providing your needs, your concerns, the training that is required. The Prime Minister, as clueless as he is now speaking about asking Canada for help. I went to Canada twice as the Minister of National Security. I worked with the Canadians. We got what was required. Their job could assist us in community policing and training. It was all there. We came back to Trinidad and Tobago, but the systems are all there. So running all over the world now, begging for help because of your inability to find proper policies conducive to reducing crime shows your incompetence, your ignorance in trying to understand how to deal with providing citizens with their most fundamental right, which is that of safety and security.
And as we end, Captain Griffith, we reflect on the past few weeks. We saw that last week, or was it earlier this week, there was a raid in Santa Cruz, Lower Santa Cruz, and a number of police uniforms and high-level weapons and ammunition was found and seized. Last week, there was a similar raid in Santa Cruz. It was described as the largest on-land bust of ammunition and arms by Commissioner of Police Earl Griffith. We also had some months ago the seizure of what was described by the same Commissioner, Earl Christopher, as the largest on-land drug bust ever. One bust, another bust, another bust. Are you comforted by the presence of these exercises and what they have been able to yield?
I think it is very unfortunate that when you're looking at the polls being done recently, there's a recent poll done with one of these stations. It's over 80% of the country. They don't see it as a success. They are claiming, well, why persons weren't arrested. I think it's unfortunate. I see it as being successful. It may be a small hit in comparison to the tens of thousands of illegal firearms out there, but it is a step in the right direction. It is unfortunate that again, people are questioning. You're hearing lots of persons questioning whether these weapons were actually weapons that would have been seized years ago by the police, and they just brought it back to try to give the impression that weapons that were being seized. So it shows a lack of trust and confidence in the police service, which I think shocking, because just 2 years ago, public trust and confidence in the police service was at an all-time high, the highest ever, 55%. It seems obviously it's gone back down to less than 10%, and it is unfortunate. I see this as a success. I see this as a small win. Many small wins can lead towards a big victory. The unfortunate thing, however, is that because even I, as Commissioner of Police, we see 30 firearms in a hit in Piaco, also acquiring drugs and weapons and ammunition and police sirens and so forth. So these things have been done before. But my point being is that it is a drop in the bucket in comparison to over 10,000 odd firearms that are out there, and even more. It could be 2-3 times more. We don't know, because the US confirmed with me when I was Commissioner that over 95 to 97% of the illegal weapons that enter our country come through the legitimate ports of entry. And that's why I provided the Border Protection Unit policy for the government. They have refused. So we have to wait until the government changes for us to put that in. The use of the mobile scanners, the online reporting, the app reporting, so people will give us information and tip-offs so we know what to do. Liaising with Miami police chiefs, liaising with the NYPD, having a bilateral agreement with us and NYPD, the Security Cooperation Agreement I signed as the minister with Colombia and Venezuela. All of these things have been rejected, shut down and removed. And that has caused the problem of the illegal guns entering the country. 10 containers go missing annually. 10 containers. So as much as you boast about 35 weapons being seized, probably 1,000 could have entered our country last night because of a container not being checked. That is how critical it is. So as I said, I applaud the small win, but the bigger picture is to deal with our porous borders from the legitimate ports of entry, which this government have totally failed in trying to secure.
Captain Griffith, I want to thank you very much for the time that you spent with us this morning on discussing these emerging issues. We look forward to the next conversation that we'll have with you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That was